محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Inshallah, we'll continue on our lesson from where we left off. The Mu'allif rahimahullah, he says وما يخالف ثقة به الملأ فالشاذ والمقلوب قسمان تلا. وما يخالف ثقة به الملأ فالشاذ والمقلوب قسمان تلا. And what by which a trustworthy narrator alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh contradicts the majority, this is the shadh. And maqloob is two divisions that follow. إبدال راو ما براو قسم وقلب إسناد لمتن قسم. إبدال راو ما براو قسم وقلب إسناد لمتن قسم. Substituting a narrator for another narrator is a category, and switching a chain to a different text is a category. So when the Mu'allif said وَمَا يُخَالِفُ ثِقَةٌ بِهِ الْمَلَأ فَالشَّاذُ, some people they mistake it and they say فَالشَّاذُ وَالْمَقْلُوبُ قِسْمًا. They think that shadh and maqloob are from two categories. But فَالشَّاذُ is referring to what the Mu'allif was describing. وَمَا يُخَالِفُ ثِقَةٌ بِهِ الْمَلَأ فَالشَّاذُ يعني هو الشاذ. We've taken the shadh in our second lesson when we were doing the conditions of Sahih. So we'll skip through the shadh. The next matter that the Mu'allif speaks about is وَالْمَقْلُوبُ قِسْمَانِ تَلَا. So al-maqloob is two categories, two divisions. And it is as follows. إِبْدَالُ رَاوٍ مَا بِرَاوٍ قِسْمٍ. So substituting a rawi for another rawi, and substituting a narrator for another narrator is one qism, is one category. وَقَلْبُ إِسْنَادٍ لِمَتْنٍ قِسْمٍ. And substituting or switching a chain for a different text, this is a category. So the definition of al-maqloob, as the ulama define it, they say إبدال راو في السند أو إبدال السند لمتن. إبدال راو في السند أو إبدال سند لمتن, which means changing a rawi in a sanad for another rawi. So you're switching a rawi from a sanad, the rawi that's narrating this hadith, for another rawi to take his place. أو إبدال سند لمتن, or changing the sanad of a matan for another sanad. So removing the sanad that this matan came with and substituting it for another sanad that is not related to this matan. So from there we see there is two qism in it. The ulama divided to maqloob al-sanad, maqloob al-sanad and maqloob al-matan. They say maqloob al-sanad and maqloob al-matan. Maqloob al-sanad, the ulama they say, is of two types. Maqloob al-sanad is of two types. تقديم أو تأخير اسم الراوي. One of the types is تقديم أو تأخير اسم الراوي. Is bringing forth or delaying the name of a rawi. Bringing forth or delaying the name of a rawi. For example, when you say Ka'b ibn Murrah, Ka'b ibn Murrah, sometimes the narrators, what they will do is they'll switch the name around where they bring the father's name before the name of the son. And they will say Murrah ibn Ka'b. They will say Murrah ibn Ka'b. So this is what's meant by تقديم أو تأخير اسم الراوي. تقديم اسم أبيه وتأخير اسمه. أو تقديم لقبه أو كنيته وتأخير اسمه. And the second one is أن يبدل الراوي شخصا بآخر. أن يبدل الراوي شخصا بآخر. That a rawi, a narrator, switches somebody for somebody else. So he swaps somebody in the matan for in the sanad for somebody else. He swaps somebody in the sanad for somebody else. For example, when somebody switches Salim in place of Nafi'. When somebody switches Salim in place of Nafi'. Imam Malik, he narrates from Salim and Nafi' both. Salim is the son of Ibn Umar, so Abdullah. So he's Salim ibn Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab. So he's the grandchild of Umar ibn Khattab. And Nafi' is Mawla ibn Umar. Nafi' is Mawla ibn Umar. Imam Malik narrates from both of them. He narrates from both of them. So a narrator will come by, and the hadith is known through the chain of Salim. Imam Malik narrates it through the chain of Salim. Then this narrator will use the chain of Nafi', and he will substitute Salim for Nafi'. This is what's known as substituting a Rawi for Rawi. So he substitutes Salim in the place of Nafi'. Imam Malik did take from Salim and he did take from Nafi'. So here it doesn't look strange. It doesn't look strange to the person who looks at the isnad. There were some people who were known for this. There were people who were known to substitute Rawi for another Rawi, and the ulama, they describe this as Sariqatul Hadith, the thieves of Hadith. They steal the chain of narration and substitute it with somebody other than the narrators themselves. An example of that is Hammad ibn Amr al-Nasibi. Hammad ibn Amr al-Nasibi. He narrates a hadith from Al-A'mash. He says, عن الأعمش عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة. So he narrates a hadith through A'mash, through Abi Salih, through Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, marfu'an, attributed to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The hadith is, إذا لقيتم اليهود والنصارى. If you were to meet the Yahud and the Nasara, the Christians, the Yahud and the Jews, في طريق, on a path. If you were to meet the Jews and the Christians on a path, فَلَا تَبْدَأُهُمْ بِالسَّلَامِ. Do not start with the salam. Do not start with the greetings. If you look at the narration of Sahih Muslim, the narration, hadith number 2167a, 2167a, the hadith is narrated, instead of A'mash, it is by the son of Abi Salih. The son of Abi Salih, who is Suhail. The hadith is narrated through Suhail and not through Al-A'mash. Both A'mash and Suhail are known to narrate from Abi Salih. So what he did was he substituted the son of Abi Salih for Al-A'mash. And there are reasons why they would do that. Inshallah, that would come. So these individuals will substitute a narrator for another narrator, and this qism, this type of narration, is known as Maqloob. Maqloob as-sanad. Maqloob as-sanad. Maqloob al-matan, the ulama, they define it as أن يقدم الراوي ويؤخر في بعض المتن الحديث. يقدم الراوي ويؤخر في بعض متن الحديث. That he brings before part of the text for another part. So if the hadith is narrated in a certain sequence, he brings one part of the hadith before the other parts, before the sequence, in the manner that it was supposed to be. He mixes the manner that the hadith was supposed to flow in. An example of that is a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, which is found in Sahih Muslim. Hadith 1031b. Hadith 1031b. And the hadith is talking about the 7 that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place under His shade. The 7 that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will place under His shade. From the 7, it is mentioned a person who gives charity to the point where his right hand does not know what his left hand gives. This is the narration of Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim, he says, وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ, and a man that gave sadaqah, فَأَخْفَاهَا, he hid it, حَتَّى لَا تَعْلَمُ يَمِينَهُ, until his right hand does not know, مِمَّا تُنْفِقُ شِمَالَهُ, that which his left hand gives in charity. If you look at all the other narrations regarding this hadith, it's what his right hand gives, his left hand does not know about. So here, the one that's given is the right hand. In this, it is the left hand that's given, and it's the right hand that does not know what the left hand is given. So there was inqilab in the hadith. The text was switched around. The yameen was switched for the shimal. The yameen was switched for the shimal. So the hadith is حتى لا تعلم شماله ما تنفق يمينه. حتى لا تعلم شماله ما تنفق يمينه. This is one example from the substitution that occurs in a text, substitution that occurs within a text. Also, substitution regarding the text is substituting the whole isnad for a text that does not belong to it. So coming with a chain of narration that does not belong to this text, to this matan. So the ulama, they say, أن يجعل الراوي متن هذا الحديث على إسناد آخر. That they make the matan of this hadith upon another sanad. They attributed it to another sanad. وَيَجْعَلْ إِسْنَادُهُ لِمَتْنٍ آخر. And he makes it isnad, the isnad of that text for another matan, another text. وَذَلِكَ بِقَصْدِ الْإِمْتِحَانِ وَغَيْرِهِ. And that happens to test somebody or for other purposes. To test somebody or for other purposes. And this occurred to Al-Imam al-Bukhari. Al-Imam al-Bukhari, when he came to Baghdad, the ulama heard of somebody who is amazing at hadith, has entered Baghdad, and everybody was flocking to him. So they wanted to test him. They wanted to test how strong his memory in hadith is and how knowledgeable he was when it comes to hadith. So they came up with a plan that they would switch around the asanid of 100 texts. So each one, 10 of them, took 10 ahadith and they switched around and they played around with the isnad. So they made a meeting with Al-Bukhari and they gathered the people to the meeting. And the people attended that meeting and each one started to ask Imam Bukhari the 10 isnad that he mixed around with the text. And then Imam Bukhari would answer every single one, لا أعرفه, I don't know this hadith, I don't know this hadith, I don't know this hadith. Until every single 10 of them narrated the 100 hadith. So after finishing, the people looked around, looking at Imam Bukhari. This is the great famous hadith, and he's saying, لا أعلم to all these ahadith. And these ahadith are well-known ahadith. It's not a hadith that people wouldn't know. But Imam Bukhari, he knew that these ahadith, these chains did not belong to these ahadith. The hadith is known, but the chain to this hadith is incorrect. So he went back to the first guy that tested him. He said, as for you, what you narrated to me, this chain belongs to this hadith. They were shocked. He managed to pull out the chain that they mixed around for the text that they mixed around. So he narrated the chain, said this chain that you said that you attributed to this hadith, in fact, it belongs to this hadith. And the chain of that hadith, he narrates the chain, belongs to this hadith. And the chain of that hadith belongs to this hadith. So he matched the 100 ahadith with the correct chain. And the people were shocked. They were in awe and they were amazed. And that's when they realized that Imam Bukhari is somebody not to mess with. He's from the ulama of hadith. So this is known as inqilab. They did qalb of the text and the matan, the text and the sanad on Imam Bukhari. So what is the asbab that leads to the person doing this? Why would the person do qalb of the hadith? Why would the person do qalb of the hadith? Switching or substituting the chains and the matan. The ulama say, they give 3 reasons. One of them, it says to stand out or to attract more people to his narration. Everybody has the narration of Salim and Ibn Umar. Everybody knows this. The narration of Malik and Salim and Ibn Umar. But he wants to attract people to come to him to narrate from him. So what he does is he narrates it from Malik, but instead of Salim, he says An-Nafi'. So they say, interesting. This is another way, there's another chain to this hadith. So they flock to him to attain this chain. They flock to him to attain this chain. So they do it to stand out or to attract people to themselves so they can narrate the hadith from them. Also, they do it to test individuals. Some of the mashayikh, they will do a substitution between the text and the sanad to test their students, to see if their students have memorized this hadith with its correct isnad. And they also did it to Imam Bukhari, as we mentioned his story. So they use this method to test their students. But this has a condition. They say its condition is that as soon as the test is over, that the correct isnad and the correct matan is returned back to what it was. So it is clarified to the people, the correct matan and the correct isnad to this is so and so. And also the third reason why it happens is unintentional mistake. The person unintentionally mixed up between the narrations. So what is the hukum of these individuals that do these things? The hukum of these individuals that do these things. The ulama, they say, if it was done out of the person to stand out or to attract people, and he is deceiving the people on purpose so he can have a narration, so he can have hadith taken from him, they say that this is mamnu'. This is not permissible. This is not permissible. And if the person is known for that, they classify this individual as wadda'. Wadda' is somebody that fabricates a hadith. Wadda', somebody that fabricates a hadith. So if he continues to do this, they classify him as wadda', a fabricator. They say if it's done to test the people, there is no issue in it, so long as the condition was fulfilled, which means returning the hadith back to its original text or its original sanad. As long as the hadith returns back to its correct transmission. And they say if it's done by a mistake, if the person did it by mistake and he wasn't doing it deliberately, as the first one was doing it deliberately, then they say there is no issue in this. The hadith is rectified through its other chains. It is fixed through its other chains. If the mistake is consistent with a single narrator, where he constantly makes these mistakes, where he substitutes a part of the hadith or a part of the sanad or part of the rawi, then it says that this will reduce the person's hifz, his dabt, to the point where he becomes from the du'afa. From the du'afa, those who are weak in narration. So he's not doing it deliberately. If he's doing it deliberately, then he is from those that hadith is not taken from. He's a wadda', hadith is not taken from him. And if he's doing it by mistake, his level of precision is dropped. And he becomes from the narrators of du'afa. The overall ruling of Al-Maqloob, Hadith Al-Maqloob, is that it's from the weak category of narrations. It's from the weak category of narrations. The next matter that the Mu'allif speaks about is Al-Fard, the hadith that is classified as Fard. And he says, وَالْفَرْدُ مَا قَيَّدْتَهُ بثقة أو جمع أو قصر على رواية والفرد ما قيدته بثقة أو جمع أو قصر على رواية. And the fard narration is what you have limited or narrowed it down to one who is trustworthy. One who is trustworthy, thiqah, or a group of people, or a group, or to a single narration, And the fard narration is what you have limited to one who is trustworthy, or a group, or to a single narration. Al-fard is isolation, is to isolate something from the hadith, whether it be the sanad, whether it be the narrator. It is isolation. Al-fard is to isolate. The ulama, when they define al-fard, sometimes they use it to mean al-munkar. When they say fard, they use it to mean al-munkar. And al-munkar is one of the qism that's going to come up, inshallah. We'll further explore it then. And they use it also to mean al-gharib. Fard, they use it to also mean al-gharib. And we've covered al-gharib in mutawatir and ahad hadith. And then you have the definition that the muallif gave. قيدته بثقة أو جمع أو قصر على رواية. So ما قيدت روايته بثقة أو جمع أو قصر. ما قيدت روايته بثقة أو جمع أو قصر. Which is that which you narrowed down its narration to a trustworthy source or a group or to a specific narration. That which you narrowed down its narration to a trustworthy source or a group or to a specific narration. So when he says riwayati bithiqa, riwayatu bithiqa, they say أن يتفرد بالحديث عن راو معين ثقة من أصحابه أو تلاميذه. When they say تفرد به الثقة, what is meant by that is أن يتفرد بالحديث عن راو معين ثقة من أصحابه أو تلاميذه, which means to isolate the hadith of a narrator, to single out the hadith of a narrator through the narration of a trustworthy narrator from amongst his students or his companions. To isolate, to single out the hadith of a narrator through the narration of a trustworthy narrator from amongst his students or his companions. From amongst his students or his companions. And an example of that is, يعني if you look into the hadith books, you'll find sometimes they will say هذا حديث لم يرويه ثقة عن قتادة إلا فلان. And they mention whoever that fulan is. هذا حديث لم يرويه ثقة. This is a hadith that was not narrated by somebody who is trustworthy عن قتادة, from قتادة إلا عن فلان, except through فلان. So هذا تفرد به ثقة. This is what's known as تفرد به ثقة. An example of that is a hadith that is found in Sahih Bukhari. Hadith that is found in Sahih Bukhari, hadith number 1846. 1846. He says, حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف أخبرنا مالك عن ابن هشام عن ابن هشام. And Ibn Hisham is الزهري. عن أنس بن مالك أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم دخل عام الفتح وعلى رأسه المغفر فلما نزعه جاء رجل فقال إن ابن قتل متعلق بأستار الكعبة فقال اقتلوه. إن ابن قتل متعلق بأستار الكعبة فقال اقتلوه. So the hadith is narrated through Imam Bukhari, who narrates it from Abdullah ibn Yusuf, who took it from Malik, who took it from Ibn Hisham, who took it from Anas ibn Malik, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم دخل عام الفتح. He entered Mecca during the conquering, the year of conquering. وعلى رأسه المغفرة. Al-Maghfara is the helmet that is used during war. It's the helmet, the protective helmet that is used during war. And Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan, Hafidahullah, he mentions a fa'idah regarding this. He says, even though he's the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that he won't be killed until his message is complete, and that he's not going to die on a battlefield, he still took the asbab to protect himself. He still took the asbab to protect himself. So this is from the things that the Messenger ﷺ did to protect himself. So for a Muslim, it is also upon him to take the asbabs to protect himself. وَعَلَى رَأْسِهِ الْمِغْفَرَةِ. And upon his head is the armor, the helmet, the armor helmet. فَلَمَّا نَزَعَهُ. After he took it off. Another fa'idah that he mentioned, Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan, Hafidahullah, is that the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca without the state of ihram. So this shows that the person is allowed to enter Mecca for a reason without the state of Ihram. So if he's going there for other reason than Umrah or Hajj, he's allowed to enter with normal clothes. فَلَمَّا نَزَعَهُ جَاءَ رَجُلٌ. After he took off his helmet, a man came to him. And he said, إِنَّ إِبْنَ خَطْلٍ مُتَعَلَّقٌ بِأَسْتَارِ الْكَعْبَةِ. Ibn Qatl, he is holding on to, he's clinging onto the curtains of the Kaaba. The curtains of the Kaaba. Then the Messenger ﷺ said, اقتلوه, kill him. Why did the Messenger ﷺ say this? The ulama, they say Ibn Qatl was from the poets of the Arabs that would cuss the Messenger ﷺ through his poetry. So whenever he would write a poetry against the Messenger ﷺ, he would use the most filthiest of words to cuss the Messenger ﷺ. So the Messenger ﷺ promised him and another narrator, another poet, their death. He promised them that they will be killed. The ulama say the other one accepted Islam. So his blood is not touchable now, because he's a Muslim. But this one remained as a kafir, and he tried to use the Kaaba as a means of protection. And the Messenger ﷺ did not allow that, and he ended up killing him. So this individual was killed, and this is also dalil that if something was to happen in the Kaaba, and war was to break, even though it is a haram, you have a reason, you have a udhr to kill somebody else. In other times during the haram area, it is not permissible for you to harm any individual, yet alone kill somebody. So they say here, this is one of the reasons, the asbabs, that it is permissible for you to kill in the haram. So the Messenger ﷺ ended up killing him for cussing the Messenger ﷺ during his Jahiliyyah time. Regarding this hadith, if you look at all the narrators that narrated this hadith from Ibn Shihab, who is a Zuhri, they're all weak narrators. They're all weak narrators who narrated this hadith, except for Malik. So here they will single out Malik and they will say تفرد به ثقة وهو مالك. تفرد به ثقة وهو مالك. So this is an example of the narration of a thiqah being isolated from the other narrators who were the du'afa, who were the weak narrators. The second one is jam', narration by a group of people. This could be through the land, so a group of people from a certain land, or it could be through a household, like for example the narrations of Ahlul Bayt. That this hadith was not narrated except by the Ahlul Bayt, or this hadith was not narrated except by the people of Kufa or by the people of Medina. So that is known as tafarrud al-jam'. Tafarrud bil-jam'. Then the isolation of a specific group in regards to this narration. For example, you'll find it in the textbooks of the muhaddithin. They say هذا حديث لم يروه إلا أهل الشام أو أهل البصرة أو أهل الكوفة أو أهل المدينة. So هذا حديث لم يروه إلا أهل الشام. So بمعنى هي أهل الشام تفرد بهذا الحديث. تفردوا بهذا الحديث. And this is known as تفرد النسبي. تفرد النسبي أو غريب النسبي. An example of this is hadith that's found in Sunan Abi Dawood, hadith 155. Hadith found in Sunan Abi Dawood, hadith 155. He says, حدثنا مسدد وأحمد ibn Abi Shu'aib. Both of them narrated from Waki', حدثنا Waki'. So Imam Abi Dawood, he narrates from two narrators, two of his mashayikh, Musaddad and Ahmad ibn Abi Shu'aib. And they both narrate from Waki', who narrates from حدثنا دلهم ابن صالح حدثنا دلهم ابن صالح عن حجير ابن عبد الله عن ابن بريدة عن أبيه أن النجاشي أهدى إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خفين أسودين ساذجين فلبسهما ثم توضأ ومسح عليهما فلبسهما ثم توضأ ومسح عليهما. So the hadith says that النجاشي أهدى إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He gifted the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم خفين, two khufs, the socks that you wear over your feet. أسودين, and they were black. شاذجين, ساذجين, they were simple, they were plain black socks. فلبسهما, the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم wore them. ثم توضأ, then he made wudu with them. ومسح عليهما, and he wiped over them. Abi Dawood, the narrator of the hadith, he says, هذا مما تفرد به أهل بصرة. هذا مما تفرد به أهل بصرة. This is a narration that Ahl Basra single-handedly narrated. You will not find this hadith outside of Basra. You will only find it within the people of Basra. So this is a hadith that the people of Basra were isolated with. Or it was isolated through them. This hadith was isolated through them. And the third taqsim that the muallif gave, he said qasr or qasr. So what is qasr? The ulama, they say ما تفرد به راو مقصورا على رواية راو معين. ما تفرد به راو مقصورا على رواية راو معين, which is that which was isolated by a narrator through a specific narration of a narrator. That which was isolated by a narrator through a specific narration of a narrator. So he singled out this narration from a specific narrator. So, for example, when they say تفرد به فلان عن فلان, when they say تفرد به فلان عن فلان, this is to show that this fulan was singled out from the narrations of this individual. This fulan, this individual, was singled out through the narrations of this individual. An example of this is a hadith that is found in Sunan Abi Dawood, hadith number 532. Hadith found in Sunan Abi Dawood, hadith number 532. Imam Abi Dawood rahimahullah, he says, حدثنا موسى ابن إسماعيل. حدثنا موسى ابن إسماعيل وداود ابن شبيب. So again he narrates from two of his mashayikh. قال, they both said, حدثنا حماد, narrated to us from Hammad عن أيوب, from Ayyub عن نافع عن ابن عمر أن بلالا أذن قبل طلوع الفجر. That Bilal made adhan before the sun rose. فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, then the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم ordered him, ordered Bilal, أن يرجع فينادي, to go back and to call out to the people and to say to the people, ألا إن العبد قد نام, ألا إن العبد قد نام. Indeed, the slave or the servant, meaning the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was asleep. And he repeated this twice. Meaning, when I was giving the adhan, I was still half asleep. I didn't realize that the sun was not out yet. So I gave the adhan before its time, to let the people know the first adhan that I gave, it was before its time. You still have time before the actual time of Fajr. And he mentions Zada Musa faraja'a fanada. Musa added into that narration faraja'a. So here, when we mentioned farja', فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يرجع. فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يرجع فينادي. Musa added faraja'a, and he actually went back. So when the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم ordered him, he went back. So this was an addition from Musa. Al-Imam Abi Dawood, at the end of that narration, he says, وَهَذَا الْحَدِيثُ لَمْ يَرْوِيهِ عَنْ أَيُّوبٍ إِلَّا حَمَّادٍ ibn سَلَمَةٍ. هذا الحديث لم يرويه عن أيوب إلا حماد ibn سلمة. This narration, this hadith was not narrated from Ayub except through Hammad. It was not narrated from Ayub except through Hammad. If you look into the hadith, you'll find it that many people took it from Nafi', including Ayub. So many people narrated it from Nafi', including Ayub. And from all the students of Ayub, only Hammad narrated it. From all the students of Ayub, only Hammad narrated it. You won't find anyone else that would narrate this hadith from Ayub except Hammad. So this chain will be singled out through the narration of Ayub. Hammad is singled out through the narration of Ayub. What is the difference between the narration of a thiqah, where he was singled out, and the narration of Hammad here? Hammad is also a thiqah. Why couldn't you say it is the isolation of a thiqah in this instance? The first one, we mentioned that there are other narrators, but they were abandoned because they're all da'if. So he was singled out because he was thiqah. In this instance, there aren't other narrators. So he was singled out as the only narrator. So that is the difference between the isolation of a thiqah and the isolation of an individual. The isolation of a thiqah and the isolation of an individual. Whereas for thiqah, there are other people narrating it. But as for this individual, he was the only narrator for this hadith. So the only one from the students of Ayub to narrate it was Hammad. So this made Hammad stand out, to be isolated with this narration. Even though this narration will be found through other chains of narrations, through the chains that were taken from Nafi', but through the specific chain. As we mentioned, it's through a specific narrator's chain. So through the specific chain of Ayub, only Hammad narrated it. So because of that specificness, it's known as qasr. It's known as qasr. Inshallah, before we finish off, I'd like to touch on something that is very important for the student of knowledge. When it comes to the mustalahat, the terminologies that are used by the scholars, it is very important that you understand it according to who is using this term. We mentioned that when it comes to the fard, some of the ulama will use it as munkar, some of the ulama will use it as gharib, and some of the ulama will use it in this manner. They will use it in this manner. So if you come across a hadith and you find it tafarrada bihi, make sure this is not an alim that tafarrada bihi means hadith munkar. For him, it could possibly mean hadith gharib. Tafarrada bihi yani hadith gharib. So it is very important to look at the terminologies of the ulama and how they apply it. Don't think that this is the standard application for all of the terminologies. Sometimes we see in the use of Imam al-Tirmidhi where he says gharib. And if you look into the isnad of the hadith is not gharib. The hadith is mashhur or aziz, but he used the term gharib. And here he would mean tafarrada bihi fulan an fulan. He would mean tafarrada bihi fulan an fulan. He used the word gharib interchange for al-fard. Interchange for al-fard. So it's very important that you pay close attention to how the ulama use these terms. Wallahu alam. Sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa iyyakum.